Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. December 23rd, it's an overreaction Monday, so we'll be getting into all of your reactions from the weekend of stuff. And this will be kind of a broad-ranging SDH. We do have soccer over there this evening, live from the Brewhouse Cafe, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock tonight. I know a few people are coming out to hang out with us. Lots of things to talk about there. We don't want to take all of that content, but there are things that we got to get into in the overall world of soccer this morning. Jason Longshore, John Nelson with you this morning, and I need your help, people who are out there listening. John has somehow lost a Google Doc that was shared with him that the whole point of Google Docs is so you don't lose it. At least that's what I thought. And I have no idea how he did this because I don't know. I've hit a wall with the technological challenges of one John Nelson.
Well, no, not there. Okay. But I do have the secondary version. I just looked in the trash bin to see if it was there, and it's not there either.
I don't know. Anyway, yes, when you cut and paste and put it in an email, I would hope you could handle that one. But I have no idea how you're getting rid of documents that people are sharing with you now that I don't know. Anyway.
Yes.
No,
welcome to Monday.
Welcome to John and technology. That's what it's turned into.
That too.
It's like the foolproof way to do these things, and somehow it's not foolproof.
Well,
I'll let you guys figure that one out.
I was going to say, it's like, if it ain't proof, then who's in charge?
Anyway, we're going to get into laws of the game and VAR and such. We've been teasing it for a minute, and Soccer America had a good post about the future of VAR version 2, according to them. We'll get into that as we go. But the question I want to start with for you guys out there listening, and whether it's live or on demand later on, what changes would you make? Like, we've seen VAR in MLS now for a good while. We've seen VAR in the Premier League for a short period of time. We've seen VAR in international competition. Plenty of leagues around the world use it. I think now most people who follow the game have a good enough understanding of what it does, how it does it. What would you change about it, about the laws of the game, just in general to make the game better? We'll get into that in hour number 2, so we'll give you a little bit of time to let that marinate in your head a bit. The big news from the weekend, really, since we talked to you last, is Columbus making their deal official with Lucas Zelarayan, the number 10 from Tigres. It's a club record transfer fee, and the Crew are really, I think, showing their intent now of what this new ownership, what Caleb Porter, and what is expected of this club going forward. They're not messing around, and you add that to an Eastern Conference with quite a few teams not messing around, makes for great competition, and it feels like the last couple years of your Atlantas, your LAFCs, kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. Now the rest of the league is on board with this, and this could be the highest level of competition we've seen in MLS in 2020.
With the Haslams, you have seen ever since they signed on and bringing in Tim Bezbatchenko and seeing what Columbus wants to do, because you're building that new stadium and you're setting the table for yourself in that town to be a desired source for whether it's fandom, entertainment, whatever. Knowing that you're going into that new stadium, you're setting the table here. And I think that for 2020, as one of the teams that ain't messing around, I think that match days for MLS fans are going to be fun until you're playing that team that's not messing around. And with Columbus, we're seeing that with these moves, incremental as they've been, they're going to be a tough one to handle in 2020. Looking forward to seeing them just not looking forward to seeing them when they line up against Atlanta United.
Now, there's one huge thing that you said that I've got to disagree with. Like, match days are fun, and they're more fun when you're facing teams that are taking this seriously. That's what everybody has to want for this league. It's not fun to run through a league and demolish it and win by a huge number of points. Go ask Jarrett and Celtic. I mean, are league matches fun in Scotland? No, because nobody can compete. So you've got to have the competition. You've got to have teams pushing it, and it can't just be a couple. MLS is only going to grow when your Columbuses, when your Kansas Cities, when your Vancouvers are spending money and pushing the bar and signing players that maybe in the past would have been out of their price range. That's when everything is fun and competitive. That's when you get teams that can compete with Liga MX. That's when you get teams that can compete on a world stage. That's fun. And that's what's going to make everything better. I don't think any league is good with a couple of top teams and then others that can't compete.
That's boring.
Yeah, it's not fun. So we need more fun. We need more competitive matches. You need to look at the schedule for Atlanta United in 2020 and say there's going to be a bunch of challenging matches that are going to be a lot of fun.
I mean, think about the East in and of itself. The anticipation that's there with Inter Miami, the obviously Nashville coming online, you get that rivalry there. You're seeing the acquisitions that we're seeing with New England. New England's not messing around. We know what we're getting with NYCFC, even though there are questions about who's actually going to be leading them, and I mean that on the touchline sense. And you're seeing with Oscar Pereja what Orlando is coming to the table with. You're seeing with Toronto with what they're wanting to do. So now you're going to have a bunch of teams, and I'm just talking in the East right now, without even looking at the West, knowing what we've seen with LAFC and such, that you're going to be trading haymakers with. And I know that any team wants to be challenged in that dynamic. You want to be challenged with teams that are going to make it. See, now I was going to say worthwhile, but I don't think that's necessarily the right word to use. But when you have a successful,
it's absolutely the right word to use.
Okay. Well,
it's the right word to use. I mean, let's compare it to Scotland. Let's compare it to other leagues where there's no competition. How good do you feel when you win the league for the 8th time in a row? Does it mean anything at that point? Is it worthwhile? Do you celebrate the same way? No. If it's difficult, if you're tested, if you have to survive and prove yourself and fight for it, does it mean more? Do you celebrate harder? Yeah. So, yeah, worthwhile is absolutely the right word. It's more worthwhile if you have to compete to win it.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out, using the word worthwhile was the one that was in my head, and I was trying to sit there and think about the grind and the process, and to me it seemed like worthwhile at the end of the day. As I think this through, then yeah, if you've gone through the grind and you busted your ass and you've gotten to the point to where it was a fulfilling season and you've got the best that everyone else is coming after you with, and you still ended up at the top, then I guess worthwhile is the right word to use as I'm thinking this through.
It's got to be. I mean, if you win an easy competition, how much does it truly mean to you? If you win a difficult competition, I mean, I think it's going to mean more. So if you're going into the East now and not looking at, all right, well, Orlando's a gimme. Okay, this one's a gimme. All right, this team was bad last year. That's a gimme. If you're looking at the Eastern Conference, if you're Atlanta United, just to take them for an example, and you say, all right, Cincinnati, well, they say they're going to sign 2 or 3 new designated players before the season starts. Let's see what they do. Orlando's going to be better. They were 11th. Columbus is going to be much better. They're 10th. Montreal, who knows, but at least they're going to be talked about because of Thierry Henry on the touchline. Chicago, they finally get their sporting director. We'll talk about that in a bit. We'll see what other moves are following that up. New England is better because they were really good at the end and they pushed you in the playoffs. Red Bulls are the Red Bulls, and even though I don't think they're going to be as good, and I think they're going to have to fight to get into the postseason, there's still that rivalry right now with them and Atlanta United. DC has work to do, or they're going to get lapped. Toronto, we know what they've done, and we know what they have available to do now with a designated player slot that they didn't have before. Philadelphia's got questions. NYC has pretty much all their talent coming back. We just have to see who's going to be in charge. That's a compelling Eastern Conference. It's a more compelling Eastern Conference than last year, where it felt like there was a big separation between the top 3-4, and it really wasn't until the end that Toronto made it a top 4. And New England pushed at the end and was difficult at the end, but they had to do that to get into 7th. Like, it felt like a clear gap. Now, I mean, just going into the season, New York, Atlanta, Toronto, New England, Columbus, I think are a definite group of 5, with Orlando probably leading the next group if they get the Cano deal done. But Philadelphia, DC, Red Bulls, all right there. And Chicago, Montreal, Cincinnati have things that could be pointing them in the right direction. We just see how they have to handle it now with acquisitions, because all have pretty big question marks as to what their starting 11 is going to look like. That's far more compelling. That's far more worthwhile. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, then you look at the West, and you're looking at Vancouver bringing in Cavallini. You're looking at Sporting spending money. You're looking at Seattle trying to reload. Another year in San Jose with Almeida. You're looking at Portland trying to get back to where they want to be. Minnesota with the anticipation there. Galaxy, you know that they're going to want to spend money to try to continue to get back to being a top 4 team and making noise in the playoffs in a Western Conference where they're consistently there. LAFC, you know what they want to do and what they're capable of. Houston and Dallas and Colorado, okay. Right now they're not at that top group. They're fighting for that playoff spot, but there's always that anticipation of, okay, now that you've seen the other teams in the West do what they've done, can you at least try to, I'm not going to say match because financially and all these other things come into play, but all right, these teams have done this. What are you going to do to try to match that?
I disagree with the financial thing. I mean, I think Kansas City, Vancouver, Columbus have shown you that you can find the money in this league. You're not talking $50 million. You're talking $7 million to go get a Lucas Del Ryon that's going to change something. There's no excuse for anybody now about the spending stuff, because you've got the attention of top players in this hemisphere that want to come here. And if you are a, quote, lesser team, lesser city, not as exciting of a market, you can still get talent that can compete. Everybody in the West is trying to upgrade. I mean, look at the teams that didn't make the postseason last year. Vancouver gets Cavallini. They finally spend. Kansas City gets Polito, and they get healthy more than anything. Houston goes out and hires Tab Ramos, and they've made moves, bringing in Darwin Quintero. Colorado has designated player slots to work with, and they finished very strong anyway. And San Jose brought back Christian Espinoza, and they're not going to just sit and be quiet either. So that's your teams that didn't make the postseason. You get into the ones that did. Dallas has brought back their core. Portland is working on adding to theirs. It looks like the Yemi Chara signing is very close to happening. That gives them the replacement for Brian Fernandez that they needed. The Galaxy still have to go get that number 9, but they've got Pavone coming back. Minnesota's linked to a forward now. We'll see if they get that done. Everybody has worked to improve. I mean, this is where what you want in this league right now is not even just teams trying to maintain and replace guys who move on. You've got a lot of teams trying to upgrade. And that's the difference between MLS and other leagues, in my mind, is that you're not going to get into a situation, I don't think anytime soon, even as you take some of the shackles off of spending and you allow bigger clubs to spend more money, I don't think you're ever going to get into that situation where you go into the season and we're talking about 2 or 3 teams. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't expect that in this league. Some of it's the format with playoffs. Some of it is a salary cap and some of the spending restrictions, but it makes for a far more compelling championship. And it makes for, I think, to managers and a growing number of managers, and that's why you're starting to see some of the managers come to this league that are, it is more worthwhile. And it means more because the managerial side of it, you're not just choosing to go to the team that has the most money in the league. You can go and have an effect. I think Almeida's impact last year can show you that. You can go into a team and have an impact because the gap in quality is not as strong between these different clubs. And it just makes the league more interesting to me. So if you get more teams that close that gap, the better off everybody in the league is, and the better off, I think, the game in this country can be, because everything feels more compelling. It's not just a handful of games that it's like, ooh, okay, that's got to be on national TV. There's a game every week. I mean, there's a match every week of the season that you look at and you're like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. I want to watch that one. All right, cool. All right, I'm going to have to tape that one. All right, I'm going to have to watch that one later. I got to see what happens in this match because there's just compelling storylines across the league. And I think we've still got a lot of stuff that will be happening with Miami, with New York City, and who's going to be the manager. And I do think the Arsenal stuff has affected maybe both of those, but actually I'm going to say, yeah, definitely both of those. There's a lot of stories still to tell. And it's a cool spot for Major League Soccer to be in right now. It does feel like it's on the up, and this is a big year for the league. Year number 25, season number 25 for MLS, and I think it's going to be the most impactful one and maybe the most wide open one going into it with the number of teams that can compete to win MLS Cup at the end of the year.
Because we're looking at, I mean, in just the conversation that we've had in the last 20 minutes, you're looking at, what, 8, 9 teams that could chase after MLS Cup?
In the East, Atlanta, New York City, Toronto, New England, and Columbus right now. In the West, LAFC, Seattle. I'm going to include the Galaxy in that because I do think they'll go out and get a big number 9. I'm going to include Sporting Kansas City in that. That gets you to 9. Jury's still out just a bit on RSL Minnesota, Dallas, San Jose. Portland is right there to make it 10, potentially. But some of these others that are outside of that group of 10, one move could change it. So it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a lot of things to get into, and still a lot to get into with training camps less than a month away. We're going to take a quick break. If you have questions, if you have ideas about who you think are the contenders going into 2020, tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Well, it's an Overreaction Monday, so we're already getting overreactions on Twitter. Yes. Michael Ruiz playing right into the gimmick. It's been 20 minutes, and you haven't talked about Miggy yet. What? I thought this was an Atlanta United show. I didn't think Miggy played for Atlanta United anymore, Michael. Just saying. You know, it goes back to something we were talking about in the break. John said, it's how cool is it that the Arsenal managerial job's affecting moves in MLS, and it's kind of something that I've said to other people about, like, how cool is it Atlanta's doing this in MLS, or how cool is it that this happened? And you want to get to a point that it's not cool, that it's just not a big deal. Even like the Miguel Almiron goal at Newcastle, it's awesome, it's great, but it'll be cool when that's just another part of business with Atlanta United, with players who move on and score goals in big leagues, and it's a good thing. I mean, I'm ecstatic for Miguel Almiron, but I also haven't been freaking out about, oh, he hasn't scored a goal. He's supposed to be scoring a bunch of goals. You're not paying attention to what he does. But anyway, the English media has never truly understood what Almiron is. It shouldn't have been a big deal that he got his first goal here. It's a cool moment for him. It's an awesome moment for that ball kid. And It was a great celebration. But I'll be really happy when it's just hey, players move on and do well, and we celebrate them, and it's a good thing. It'll be cool when that doesn't have to open the show, according to some, on an Overreaction Monday.
Hey, has the hashtag.
No, but he didn't use the hashtag, so I got to be careful.
That's true, he didn't.
I got to be careful with it, because he might not have been overreacting. Just kidding.
So
Michael.
It's an on-par reaction for Michael Ruiz.
We don't know what kind of a reaction it is. You're guessing.
That's true. Michael, use a hashtag. Tell us what kind of a reaction this was for you.
But he did say the MLS has evolved so much in the past decade. Can't wait to see what the next decade holds. And yeah, I mean, you go back to going into 2010, who you thought had a chance to win the title, and it's like 2 teams, 3 teams. And none of them actually ended up winning it, because 2010 was just a weird season with a frigid MLS Cup game with players tearing their ACLs and forcing own goals for the winning goal. But anyway, it feels night and day even 10 years ago. I mean, that game and that season felt small. This doesn't anymore, because we're talking about players going from Atlanta United to Newcastle and scoring in the Premier League. We're talking about MLS hires being affected by big clubs around the world and what they're going to do. We're talking about signings. I mean, there had been lots of talk about Edinson Cavani coming to either the Galaxy or Inter Miami. Well, it looks like he's going to Atletico Madrid instead. You've got a lot of things that now MLS is involved in those situations, whereas before they felt like the kid looking into the party outside the window snooping around because they weren't invited.
Yeah, you're now the peer in the discussion. You're one of the guys that's holding the. You're one of the 3 guys holding the snifter of brandy inside. Everybody's smoking cigars, wearing funky jackets that are made out of velour at the big folding chairs, and you're right there standing in the middle of the room talking with everybody else with the big cigars.
MLS is not at a brandy and cigar party. I don't know what kind of parties you hang out at.
I was trying to think of was it trading places?
I
With
guess.
Duke and Duke trading, where they're all in the room. It's that old stereotype of the 80s movie where everybody's just kind of chilling and doing their thing and having discussions about big business, and you're all just kind of sitting there and just doing your thing with rather large glasses of alcohol at the bar.
Yeah, but MLS isn't coming into that party. MLS is coming into soccer's not that party anyway. That's not the soccer party. That might be like the cricket party, or maybe the rugby party, since I think they're all gentlemen. Now the soccer party's crazy. You got keg stands and you got like people doing shots and you got all that stuff. It's just MLS wasn't the cool kid allowed to come inside last time. They were. If you want to go with 80s movies references, they were 16 Candles, Anthony Michael Hall trying to get into the party, and then eventually they did when David Beckham invited them in. There you go. There's your 80s movie reference of the day.
And now you're Anthony Michael Hall, and you're hanging out with the blonde, right?
No, now you're freaking Jake. Like that's the situation. Is MLS is not the awkward kid, hanging around now. They're part of the mix. I mean, it's only going to continue. Like that's what's cool about it, and they're just part of the mix now. When you go into an MLS offseason and you start looking at, okay, who could be on the radar? You're talking about players at big clubs. You're talking about players that big clubs are chasing. You look at who could be joining front offices. Same thing. Who could be joining coaching staffs? Same thing. Now, going into this season, you're talking about, all right, this league's going to be on ABC and Fox, more than it's ever been on over-the-air TV because people want to see it. You're talking about ratings when it comes to TUDN and Univision, and they've been higher than they've ever been for MLS because it's a compelling competition and it's exciting and people want to see it. So it's growing, and it's very cool to be part of this whole conversation. New England added to the conversation on Friday. They made the deal official with Adam Buksa, the Polish youth international, 23 years old. He's got 5 years of pro experience in the Polish top flight. He'll be a designated player. Transfer fee, it's a $2 to $7 million range. That's kind of large, but he'll be a DP. New England, when you get into their potential lineup and what they can throw at you from an attacking perspective, you've got Gustavo Bo, who came into the league and really made a big run in the second half. You've got Carlos Gil, who was one of the more underrated players in 2019. You've got Christian Penilla, who had an up and down year. I think he's got the talent, and you put more talent around him, his speed becomes more of a factor. It's a good attacking group. I want to see how Bruce Arena uses it, because what I thought he settled into late last season was more of a 4-4-2 empty bucket, because Bo would drop into that hole behind Bunbury and in front of Wilfred Zahibo and Luis Caicedo. Does he continue along with that? That gives Carlos Gil a lot of freedom on the right side to kind of tuck in as well when Bo stays up high. Does Buksa replace Bunbury in the lineup? I think if you keep the shape, that's probably what will happen. I don't know if you could go to a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to call it, with two of those strikers out of Buksa and Bo and Bunbury out wide. The triple Bs, the killer Bs here for New England, it's going to be a bit of a challenge for Bruce Arena to figure out what combination or what deployment is going to work the best. My guess is Buksa replaces Bunbury, and you continue with the 4-4-2 that gives you a pretty solid foundation that, you were a very difficult team to beat in the second half last year.
Ari Liljenwald, for those who hadn't seen the top five that he had so far, 5 biggest transfers. He had Buksa as number 5, Zelarayan, Pulido, Espinoza, Cavallini, and Buksa as number 5. Does that sound about right for you?
I don't I don't know how Bucks is going to translate, and that's the biggest question. I mean, the Polish league, it's not a guarantee that you come out of that and you come into Major League Soccer and star. That's another reason why MLS has grown. 10 years ago, maybe that was the case. Now, you're taking a player who scored 18 goals and 40 appearances in the top flight in Poland. Is that a guarantee for success? I don't think it is anymore. I really don't. And I do wonder how he's going to fit into a group that is very Latin in personality, with Bo, with Pinilla, with Heel. It's a probably not what he's accustomed to playing in Poland. So how quick is the transition going to be for him? I just don't know. I think there will be bigger signings. This was one that surprised me, and I'm assuming that Arena and scouting department seen something they really like out of this guy. That's why I don't think the transfer fee is going to be in that $7 million range. That feels very high for this. Probably closer to 2 to 5. But Cavallini is a bigger one. Polito's a bigger one. Zelarayan's a bigger one. Those are easy answers. Bringing Espinoza back for San Jose, getting him on a permanent, you're talking about a double-digit assist guy in 2019. So, yes, I think he's shown it. I don't know if Bucks is a double-digit goal guy for New England. I think there will be bigger signings. I don't think he'll be on this list by the time the season starts. But if he transitions well enough to MLS, he could be at the end of the year. But I think there will be bigger transfers during the offseason than him.
And that was why I wanted to ask the question, because of the movement that we've seen so far. And then you end up with someone like Buxa coming in from a league that we normally would sit there, and I think that your first thought is Legia Warsaw, and that's about it. And then you have someone like Buxa who comes in with 18 and 40. That's a good ratio. But in other sports, we also are dealing with ratios. Like in the National Hockey League, when someone comes over from the Continental League and they put up massive numbers in Russia and come over to the National Hockey League, what you can sit there and gauge is maybe a 2/3 exchange rate for offense.
Not going to work here, because
that's what I was trying.
How big of a difference in style is the National Hockey League and any other hockey league in the world? Like, how different is the hockey?
It's far more intense. It's far more defensive. It is basically
not talking level. I'm not getting into quality. More of style. Like, does it look different stylistically in these leagues? Because that's what's going to affect the transition. You look at, everybody wants to say Major League Soccer, Premier League. Okay, it's nothing like it. All right. Yeah, the MLS doesn't look like the Premier League yet, but Poland doesn't look like MLS in terms of speed of play, in terms of style. Just like Mexico and Argentina look different than MLS because there's different things that change it stylistically. I don't know. I'm not a hockey guy, so I don't know if it's like the transition. I think one thing in terms of quality, you can create a ratio of, well, he did this here, so he should do this here. I think the style is such a big factor in this sport that some players can adjust to a different style, others can't. I mean, you see top players go to a league and it just doesn't work. It's just, no, it didn't fit, or a team and it just doesn't fit. I think that's a harder comparison in the sport. Hockey, it might be easier.
But to your point about transitioning when it comes to personality, when you mentioned the Killer Bees and a very Latin style that we associate with New England, how does someone like Buxa come in, and how does his game translate / adjust, and how does he adjust as an individual to what we've seen with New England. I think that that's the number one question for me and for anybody. It's like, yeah, okay, you punched a point, you punched a .45 when it comes to goals per game in Poland with whatever you were doing stylistically at Pogoń Szczecin. How does that translate? How does your game and how do you as an individual come in to the environment that's already been established in New England, and how do you adjust your game to match what's already in place? That was the thought that when you were talking about integration, for me, that was the larger question.
Yeah, it's not that established. I mean, Bruce Arena came in, May, June last year, so you got 20 games or so under your belt. I don't think it's that rigid. It's not him fitting into Bruce Arena's New England Revolution. It's the difference in style, pace, and personality from the Polish league to what he'll experience in New England. There's other teams in MLS that maybe would be an easier transition for him. That's another area of growth for this league, is that all the teams don't feel the same anymore. But I just don't know, because he hasn't played outside of Poland. So with that never happening, it's a riskier move. And again, that's why I don't think it's a $7 million move. If it's 5 or less, all right, you can take that risk. And if it doesn't pan out, you can find a home for him and make it work and transfer him and get a good bit of your return back and go from there. But it's a risk. I mean, Argentina to MLS, I think we've seen that in general that's an easier transition. But as Pity Martinez showed this year, it's not always an immediate one. Mexico to MLS, it's a much closer transition, especially now with more competition between the two. I think you have a better sense of what that transition's all about. But it's not a guarantee, hit the ground running day one, everything's fine. Poland to MLS is pretty different. So I'll be curious to see if he is a player that wins the job immediately, or if maybe they take their time and they don't have to rush him. And that's the great spot where Bruce Arena is with this Revolution squad, is you don't have to rush Buxa into the lineup. You know, you look at some of these other big moves that are on Ari's list at MLSsoccer.com. You've got guys that are being signed to start day one, and that they've got to have a big impact for that team to have the season that they're expecting to have. New England, if Buxa's a reserve for most of the year, and Bunbury gets most of the time, we've seen what Teal Bunbury does in this league. He's a double-digit goal scorer. You don't have to just push him aside straight away. If it takes Adam Buxa more time to integrate into the group, if he has to come off the bench for a while, cool. That's fine. And that's another sign of the growth of the league, is you can actually make a signing like this, and if that player doesn't score 20 goals this season, you can still be okay. And that's because the overall level's risen, and New England is in just that great spot where they like the player, they're going to spend the money to bring the player in, but they're not in a position where they have to rush him, because you've got a lot of flexibility. I mean, if you wanted to just go with one up top, if you've decided, all right, well, Teal Bunbury can only give me so much, you could go 4-2-3-1 with this group really easily and bring on a Diego Fagundes to play. You could play a Dewan Jones or a Tejan Buchanan in the midfield, which we saw at times, and play Bo up top by himself while you're bringing Buxa along. So you've got a great situation where you're bringing in a player that is talented, a player that's drawn some interest, a player that has some risk attached to it, and you don't have to throw them into the deep end of the pool.
One of the other things, since we're stuck on New England here for a second, that we didn't get the chance to talk about, is I just wanted to get your thought on Seth Sinovic moving to New England. That's
another bit of depth. I mean, it's another depth piece in the defense that was needed, because even with Sinovic in, it's Butner who you signed, who should be the starter. Sinovic should be the backup. Andrew Farrell, Antonio De La Mea, Brandon Pye, that's the rest of your back line. You're going to have to add more than that. But now you've got two left backs that can play in this league. We know what Sinovic can do in this league. We've seen it for years in Kansas City. Butner should be a better player based off pedigree, but he'd also been out of contract. So, he started training with the team late last season, but training and playing are two different things. You're good on the left side. With a 4-man back line, your left side, you're good. You've got two guys, either one can start, you're fine. You've got two center backs and you've got a right back, you're okay. You need more depth than that, and we'll see how they handle it. But it's not a pickup that really is going to get a lot of talk, but it's a good one. I mean, it just adds to that depth overall and makes them a better overall squad.
And that's, since we were on New England, we've talked about the Kellen Rose signing, but I don't think we'd had the chance to get into Sinovic, and that was why I just wanted to get your abridged version on bringing him in as a part of the depth for the Rebs this season.
But it's a lot like Rowe. I mean, it's two guys that, you're not signing to be game changers. You're signing to improve the overall quality of your group, and it allows you, instead of keeping an Isaac Anking, a Damian Rivera, Nicholas Firmino, a Justin Rennicks, instead of keeping those guys on an 18 to travel and not play, they can play USL League One with Revolution 2 now, and you've got quality MLS depth like Sinovic and Rowe who can be in your 18. And when you are looking at the overall progression of a group, you've got to have that. When you're having these young players who need playing time, but are stuck as number 17 or 18 on a game day roster and not playing, their development gets frozen. We saw that in Dallas for a long period of time. We've seen it other places in the league. Now New England starting that USL League One team and adding two veterans to their roster, they can send their young guys away to play. Their young guys can go play League One matches and get time and develop. They don't get stalled out. And I think that's part of the overall transformation that New England is trying to make. They haven't developed a ton of talent. They haven't had a whole bunch of homegrown players or even players that have come through the draft or Generation Adidas that they've developed. They haven't done that much as of late. Now they need to get there because the league is one that we're seeing teams spend money and have success, but we're also seeing teams like Dallas and others develop talent and have success. And I think in a perfect world, you're able to do both. And if New England can get to that point where they can bring in a Buxa, a Bo, a Heel, and get production, but then also develop a Rennicks, a Firmino, a Rivera, an Anking, and have those guys form the base of your squad going forward, and you fill in the gaps with big signings, that's where you want to be. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think Bruce Arena has come in and brought just a professional mindset to the way the New England Revolution are constructed. Doesn't guarantee they're going to win MLS Cup this year, but I think he's put them in a much better place going forward in 2020 and beyond with all of the things that have happened since he came in. They just weren't there before.
And with the release of the USL League One schedule, they get to kick things off March 28th at home against OCB.
Yeah, and they're going to play at Gillette, which, again, you're not paying to rent it, so I get it. It's going to be a weird atmosphere for League One matches, but it's an opportunity for them to get guys playing time, and that's what's important, and that's why they're doing a League One team. It's all about playing time. It's all about development. It's not going to be as much about drawing a crowd, but if you're in the Foxborough area, if you're a Revolution fan and you can get to those games, you get a treat because you get to see these young guys, the future of your club, get time. And I think for them too, it gives them a leg up in trying to bolster their academy, which has been a challenge for them. They haven't done enough out of their academy. Now your top academy guys are going to be able to get time in League One. That gives you a big selling point when you're talking to top talent in the region. Like, hey, come play here, and in the summer you're going to get a chance to play professionals all over the country. It's going to make you a better player. That's going to raise the level for the whole club, from from bottom of the academy side of it to the top with the first team, because everything's just going to be in a better place. Give us your thoughts on that. Give us your thoughts on anything else. If you have overreactions, we'll take them on Twitter at SoccerDownHere. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Final segment, hour number 1, SDH, December 23rd. We'll be getting into VAR and laws of the game and all that good time stuff in hour number 2. Trying to remember, did we have any ridiculous VAR controversies over the weekend?
Not that I can think of. Had other controversies, but not VAR.
Oh, yeah, no, we have on Soccer Over There tonight, Mondays with Racism, because that's what happens on Mondays. There's something that happened that was of a racist nature in the world of soccer on the weekend, and we have to talk about it because that's what happens. Good job, idiot in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Good job. Moron.
Freaking genius. I know it doesn't translate to radio, but you had one of those when I was not watching the game at the time, but then looking in the timeline in Twitter, you see that it's going down, then you switch over and then understand what's going on. And it's just one of those steam out of your ears moments. But yeah, you guys will be talking about it tonight, and it will be the same spirited discussion that we've always had. We will continue to have, and we will not stop having until people stop being morons.
Well, people are going to be morons, and we'll probably be talking about it, but we will be calling them morons because that's just where it is at this point. And I don't want to see these morons or people who feel emboldened by other people being morons to emerge from the idiot realm and do this stuff in MLS. Although I'm sure it has happened, and when it does, it's going to get pointed out. It happened in NWSL this season, and eventually it got sorted out. The club did not stop until it was. That's a full credit to the Utah Royals organization. But it's annoying that it has to be talked about, but it has to be talked about, and we will talk about it on Soccer Over There. We might start just a little bit late tonight, so if we're not on right at 6 o'clock, don't freak out. We will be there for you, and you can come hang out with us at the Brewhouse Cafe if you so choose. All right, let's get into a couple other bits of news and rumor before we clear the decks for our referee conversation in hour number 2. Chicago made it official. They have their sporting director, George Heitz. He is the former manager and sporting director former sporting director and board member at FC Basel in Switzerland. He was there through the summer of 2017. I think he's done some work with FIFA as well. Little bit about him. So while he was there, Basel won 8 of their 20 championships in Switzerland. That's pretty good impact. Developing talent, Shaka, Shaqiri. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't know if it's the Chicago Fire, like 5 fast facts about George Heitz. Scouting Mo Salah. He started his career there, which is good. I think a lot of people were scouting him. So the fact that they signed him is probably the more important thing here. They signed him from his Egyptian club after seeing him at the U20 World Cup. I think that's a little bit bigger than actually just scouting him. There's probably a lot of people who could put that one on their 5 facts. He was part of the negotiation that sent Shelton Gashi to the Colorado Rapids. Didn't really work out for the Rapids. He had injuries that I think complicated it, and the Rapids were going through transitions from Mastroeni to Hudson that didn't really work out well for Gashi either. He's a very talented player. I liked him as a player, just never fit for Colorado. And during Heitz's time at Basel, they played in the Champions League a good bit and made some noise in the Champions League as well and in the Europa League. So it's a guy who's been at a big club in a small pond, I think is a fair way to put it, but a guy who has been part of big situations, whether it's players, whether it's transfers, whether it's competitions. It's a good hire for Chicago. It's a very good hire. And now he's got to hit the ground running fast because he's got to hire a manager. He's got to sign designated players, and even more than just signing designated players, he's got to just build a squad, build a competitive squad, because right now you've got a goalkeeper in Kronholm who I wasn't all that convinced by, but he's okay. You've got 2 options at left back that I think you're good with, Bornstein and Jeremiah Guchar. You've got center backs you're covered with Calvo, with Kappelhoff, with Marcelo. You don't have a right back in the team at all. You've got Alvaro Madran, who is a quality central midfielder. You've got Brant Bronico, who has shown that he is a very good player in this league. You've got Michael Azira, who is later in his career but serviceable. You've got Raheem Edwards, who has had a lot of potential. It's never truly manifested itself. You've got Przemysław Frankowski, talented winger, good right winger to have in your squad. Fabian Erbers, who's a good reserve player, can give you time on the wing, can give you time up top. Jordi Mihailovic, a good young talent who's starting to get some European interest. How long are you going to have him? Don't know. And you have CJ Sapong, who's a solid goal scorer in this league. I think that's a fair way to put it. It's not a lot of sexy time on the Chicago Fire roster. There's not a lot of excitement about that group. Frankowski and Mihailovic are probably the 2 that you're like, oh, I want to see them play. That's about it. So it's more than just, all right, I need a right back. All right, I need a couple central midfielders. All right, I need this. I need a wing. I need a left winger. You need excitement. And you're hopefully going to get those from your designated players, but I think you're going to need to look at excitement, period, because, oh yeah, he's coming in and presiding over the move back to Soldier Field, which is kind of a large building.
As is right now, with the lack of sexy time that the Chicago Fire have, where would you have them in the East?
Last. You can't put
worse than Cincinnati.
Yes.
Worse than Cincinnati.
Yes. As they currently constructed, I mean, you're taking a bad Chicago team and you're subtracting Katai, Nikolic, McCarty, Schweinsteiger. I mean, what's there? What's left?
It's a lack of sexy time.
There's nothing left. It's not even. I mean, when you're talking about standings, we're not talking sexy time. Sexy time is going to be in the crowd, and right now there's not any of that to draw people in. quality in terms of the standings, not really much of that either. So, no, they're the bottom right now. Because at least with Cincinnati, they've said, like, hey, we're going to sign 3 attacking players. Okay. And they added Medunjanin. Chicago hasn't added anybody like Harris Medunjanin. I mean, Medron, maybe, potentially, but there's questions. So, Cincinnati's ahead of them. And Miami, I mean, until they show us that they can't get things done, they've at least talked about doing things. I mean, Chicago was talking about hiring somebody for the longest time. They finally did that. Now maybe they can talk about what they want to do with a roster, because I don't know. I don't know what direction they're going to go. I have no idea. My guess, if they're going to go out and sign designated players, you're going to sign a guy who can play on the left, a guy who can play up top, maybe a box-to-box or a number 10, if you want, depending on where you want to play Jordy Mihailovic. I mean, you could move Bronico to right back if you had to. You could play Medron, Mihailovic, and Superstar, who pushes Mihailovic either higher or back into a number 8 role. Raheem Edwards, it's been a lot of talk for years, and it hasn't shown, so I think you've got to go designated player on the left wing, and you've got to go designated player up top, and then you've got to go depth, too. You still need a lot of depth in this group, so it's not a good team. It's not a good team, and Georgia Heights is going to have a lot of work to do, and it starts with not just looking at the player side, but figuring out who's going to run it on the touchline. And the person that's been mentioned, not linked, but mentioned because he worked with Heights at Basel, and he also lives in Chicago currently, is Rafael Vicky, who was with the U17s for the United States Soccer Federation at the most recent World Cup and didn't have a great tournament. But he also took over a team that had been through multiple coaching changes, and it showed. Didn't like how that team played and looked. They didn't look confident. That's got to be a bit of a concern. You're also talking about somebody with a good resume before that. So, one awkward tournament doesn't mean that you don't know how to coach. Would be kind of what happens with U.S. Soccer, right? If they, I think the only full-time coach that they have on the boys' side, if he gets hired away, it is what it is. Welcome to U.S. Soccer in Chicago, George Heights. Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun navigating all that. We'll see how he does. We'll talk about it as we go, but we're going to take a quick break. Be back and reset hour number 2 right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apelinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, December 23rd. Technology is just toying with John at this point.
This stuns you?
No, it's usually you failing to use technology. What happened now? What's going on?
Okay, so usually what we do is with the game notes, with the show notes, you can click on. And I asked you to resend them to me before the show started to see if, for whatever reason, since I allegedly deleted the original link, I have no idea how.
Describing the whole thing is so funny. Keep going.
Well,
this is great. This is gold.
I don't know how I would have done this. This is my whole point. So anyway, breaking the fourth wall. I asked Jason to resend the original Google Doc so I could click on it and see it. It didn't show up in time for the show to start, so that's when Jason did the cut and paste so I can stare at our show notes for today. So, of course, going back into my emails at 8:58 Eastern Time, considering it is now 10:03, now 10:04, an hour and 6 minutes later, the email for show prep invitation to edit finally showed up in my timeline.
But it showed up at 8:58?
It showed up as an email that registered at 8:58 that was not seen by me staring at my emails until 10:04.
Okay.
And happy Monday.
Did you like smack the side of the computer? You know, did you blow into the part where the battery is or anything? I mean, did you get tinfoil and attach an antenna? Did any of those things happen?
Trying to do the latter, but what I ended up doing was taking my cell phone and turning on the mobile hotspot and seeing how many computers here in the office it would actually impact. It did turn on and plug into the laptop that I did bring with me for insurance. I don't know if it has impacted the desktop that is here in the office, in the in-laws.
Just the whole way you're explaining this is killing me because none of that made any sense. None. It's awesome. I love it. Anyway, all right. Something else that doesn't make sense. VAR.
Yeah, stunner.
How
that.
about it?
Excellent
VAR.
Transition, sir.
Hey,
well done.
It's the easy way to go. VAR doesn't make sense in some places. VAR makes sense in others. VAR is interesting to say the least. So, Soccer America, mentioned it many times. It is absolutely worth your subscription. And they've been adding a bunch of cool commentary things that I've really enjoyed. And they've added commentary from Ahmet Governor. He is the former Secretary General and Technical Director of the Turkish Football Association. He was also head of refereeing for the Turkish FA, panel member of the FIFA panel of referee instructors and the UEFA referee convention. He lives in Austin, Texas now. Great person to have contributing to this conversation. He has went round and round about VAR because he's been involved in implementing this and probably was involved in some of the initial discussions about it. 25 countries now using VAR. I wondered what that number was, and it's in Ahmet's most recent post from Friday. 25 countries using it. Some countries are using it not just in their top flight. Germany, I don't know how deep it goes in Germany, but it goes deeper than just the first division of the Bundesliga. All the major FIFA competitions are using it too. It's going to be used in Euro 2020. the idea, some of the differences that we're seeing, and this is what he gets into here a little bit, and these are the things that drive me crazy. Look, you're going to see referees call the game differently country to country. I think we're all somewhat accepting of that. You see referees in the Premier League have a different bar for a foul than referees in Spain, for example, and MLS games are refereed differently than games in Liga MX. I think people respect that, understand that, because you get into a lot of interpretation. The laws of the game are fairly rigid, but they're not black and white in every single case. There's a lot of interpretation from referees, and referees interpret things differently in different countries, different leagues. I think we're okay with that. VAR is supposed to be something that maybe in some ways minimizes that, right? It's supposed to be that extra set of eyes, that extra person who's outside of the fray to say, hey, you missed this. Hey, you couldn't have seen this. Hey, let's get this right. But now you're even seeing different leagues do that in a different way. The whole thing with the Premier League about the on-field reviews being minimized, it changes the way that something that is supposed to make things more equal or more similar, it just creates more of it. You know? I mean, it's not what IFAB created, and the FA in England is part of IFAB in a big way and controlling how the laws of the game. This is not how it's supposed to be. So then you also have the whole thing about goalkeeper infringements on penalty kicks, and the Bundesliga is on board with the Premier League about not wanting to use VAR in those situations, even though the laws of the game are the laws of the game are the laws of the game. You have to have 1 foot on the line. Used to be 2. Was never called when it was 2. That's why when everybody flew off the handle during the Women's World Cup about, you never called this before. It was in the laws of the game. Referees just didn't call it. That's a whole different conversation, and it's one that we talked about a lot during the World Cup dates. If it's not going to be called, if referees have made the decision and teams and fans and players have made the decision that, all right, well, we just don't like this rule and we're not going to abide by it, well, change the law of the game. And it was just changed to 1 foot instead of 2. But get rid of it if we're not going to use it. And if you are going to use it, and it is something that affects a goal-scoring opportunity, because duh, then why are you not using VAR to deal with it? The part about the automatic yellow, that was a part in the laws of the game that I didn't like. Because you can just be mistiming a situation if you're the goalkeeper, not trying to knowingly gain an advantage, not trying to delay things, any of that, whatever reason you want to throw for the yellow. You could just be a step early because the attacker pump faked you in a way, or dropped a shoulder, or made you lunge one way, and you come off your line early. It doesn't have to be the automatic yellow. If it's egregious, if it's intentional, if it's, obvious, cool, give a yellow. But give the referee that discretion. That's a law of the game issue. I don't really love the idea of having the laws of the game in this situation and then the Bundesliga and the Premier League saying, well, yeah, we're not going to do that. That undermines VAR in a lot of ways, doesn't it? It makes you question it more. Now, here's a couple of stats that I think are important when we discuss this. Because, I mean, John, what are the major criticisms of VAR and what it does to the game? It's against the nature of the game. The game's not supposed to be like this. It stops the flow of the game. It slows
takes
it
much
down.
time to review.
All this stuff. Well, okay, here's some numbers. All right, this was a year after the first implementations of the VAR system. It's before the 2018 World Cup. 972 competitive matches that used VAR across the 20 national associations since March of 2016. Now, these are the early days of VAR. 69% of matches, no VAR review. 5.5% had more than one review. Now, VAR only reviews, not going to an on-field review, just the video assistant referee. Median time of 35 seconds. I think 35 seconds is acceptable, right? I mean, to get a call right.
Uh-huh. Review it, check it, turn it, 35 seconds. That sounds pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if you were on board with that or you thought it was too long.
No, I'm down with that.
Okay. On-field reviews take around 68 seconds. So VAR checks it, says, hey, you need to go look at it. You're adding roughly another 30 seconds. That's your median. I mean, that's not everyone. It's just like the 2-0 scoreline's most dangerous score in soccer. You remember the times that fell apart. You don't remember the times that the team won 2-0 and it was a boring conclusion. You don't remember the on-field reviews that are about a minute. You remember the ones that are weird. And some of them are just going to take longer. Some of them are complicated. Some of them involve like multiple things the referee's got to look at. Now, 2018 World Cup, the feeling about VAR coming out of that was pretty good, right? A little bumpy at the very, very beginning, but in general, and I think we saw it again with the Women's World Cup in the latter stages, the bar got a little bit higher. You weren't seeing VAR involved as much, and I thought it went well. I didn't love was it a penalty in the final that ultimately ended up not deciding it, but there was a decision in the final that I disagreed with the way the referee saw it, and welcome to sports. I mean, we disagree with referee stuff all the time, even with VAR. I think maybe one of the fallacies of this is that we think that VAR will perfect it. It can. It's judgment calls. There's a lot of judgment calls that you're going to look at, and I might disagree, and the ref might disagree, and you might disagree, and we all might think something different. I mean, that's the nature of the game. The Women's World Cup was a different story, and that's where I really felt like the attitude towards VAR flipped this past summer, and maybe it would have flipped anyway with it coming into the Premier League for the first time. Maybe this was just inevitable, but the attitude towards VAR really changed with the Women's World Cup. 33 on-field reviews in 52 games. So on-field review every game and a half, essentially. Nearly twice as much as the 2018 World Cup. 2019, 10.28 VAR checks versus 7.1 checks per game in 2018. So it happened a lot more. Now, I think Ahmet in this post makes a very important distinction here. You didn't have VAR in women's leagues, I don't think at all, going into this World Cup. So you had female referee crews that had a very limited experience with the VAR system because they didn't even commit to using VAR until late in the process. And this is my number one issue with that decision from FIFA. There shouldn't have been a question after the 2018 World Cup that you were going to have VAR in the 2019 Women's World Cup. There shouldn't have been a question. When you agreed to it on the Men's World Cup, it should have been locked in for the women, and you should have prepared for it. By not preparing for it or not deciding that then, and then having to rush it and prepare for it at the end, you didn't give the referees time to be ready to deal with this. So you made it worse, which is stupid. There's no explanation for it. It's just dumb. Anyway, FIFA doing something dumb, and I know it's shocking. So yes. You had female referees who hadn't used VAR. You had VARs, video assistant referees, who were men who rarely did women's games. You're setting yourself up for problems because the men's game and the women's game, there are things that are very different about it. That's why at the top levels, you don't see a lot of referees going back and forth. It's pretty much like you're refereeing one or the other. VAR, you're adding VARs who don't do the women's game on a regular basis, and you have referee crews that don't use VAR on a regular basis. You have people who've never worked together. You create this. Here's one thing that I've always wondered, and I don't know why it doesn't happen in the sport. Let me ask you, John, let's start from your experience with football, and you can go
Sure.
high school, college, pro, whatever.
Right.
Across the board with all of those, how often do you see referees work in a crew, like as a group on a regular basis?
In high school and college, the groups are fairly consistent. You're assigned to a group. You're with that group for the entire season, and you have assignments of, okay, week 1 you're here, week 2 you're here, week 3 you're here. In high school, it can change obviously because the real world might get in the way.
Sure.
But in colleges, you're a crew. Your crew goes here. Your crew goes here. Your crew goes here. There's no bringing in guys from the outside to say, you're going to be umpire this week. It's a consistent crew for an entire season.
You see a lot of people work together. I mean, baseball, you see a lot of people work together for the most part. Of course, things get weird and sickness or injury or, you know, with lower divisions where there's not as much money or schools where there's just not as much money, not as much travel. Things happen, get it. But in general, you see groups work together, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you don't see that at all in MLS or in major leagues around the world. You do in a tournament situation a little bit where you'll get a group from the same country that work together in that tournament. I think it improves the level of refereeing. Now, if you decided, all right, you don't want to commit to having the same referee with the same 2 ARs, with the same fourth, with the same VAR and AVARs. If you don't want to keep that group of 7, 8, whatever, together all the time, fine, get it. I think you can probably, the way that soccer is called, have it work where your AR crew and your center and your fourth are maybe 2 different crews, maybe 2 different pairs, duos, whatever. I would love to see, and maybe it's something that just happens in the second half of the season in MLS with playoffs, with leagues at playoffs. Maybe you work towards that as you get closer to the playoffs. Referees and VARs that work together on a regular basis.
Yes.
I think that's the most essential one. I mean, it's one thing for a referee to know his VARs or to know his ARs, and trust his ARs to then where you're not questioning when that flag goes up for an offside or a foul, that you know that you guys are on the same wavelength. Now you have the headsets and you're talking through it, but you know, all right, cool, trust that guy, got it, done, let's move on. But the ref and the VAR, when you have 2 people that look at the game differently and haven't worked together, that's where I think you get the longer checks, the longer on-field reviews, and the unnecessary reviews or checks that happen, because the way it's done, the referee has the final say, and he's basically being lobbied by the VAR that, hey, this was a clear and obvious error. And if they're not on the same page, that lobbying effort can take a while. I'd love to see them work together on a regular basis. Now, you can get there a couple different ways. If you have the centralized location of VARs, then you're going to have that happen kind of organically. You're going to have the referee in the ear with a VAR pretty consistently over time, because it's not going to be this huge pool of VARs that are randomly showing up to call games with referees that maybe they haven't worked with. So that would happen, and that would be good. But if you're going to do it in the way that MLS is doing it, I'd like to see them paired up. I think it would improve the product.
Yeah, because what you're getting is that organic consistency of folks working together who understand where someone's coming from in any given situation. You understand what they're saying instead of, being mixed and matched for an entire year with folks that you might only work with occasionally to sit there and say, okay, yeah, I know where you're coming from. You, not so much, because, I haven't worked with you a whole lot. But no, I think that kind of consistency in crew assignment would help out with just trying to understand where someone's coming from when you're looking for a review or you're looking to go over a certain call a certain way.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, get into Twitter as well. We've got plenty more on VAR and laws of the game because there's more to dig into here, and there's been a couple comments on it. Philadelphia has made a signing as well. Jose Andres Martinez, Venezuelan midfielder, number 8, will be part of that replacement. I'm assuming that he's going to be more of the replacement for Jamiro Montero than Harris Medunjanin, the defensive midfielder of the group, but we'll see where Martinez slots in. But Philadelphia, all right, everybody else is moving up the ladder in the Eastern Conference. Philly says, all right, it's time to get active. Let's do this. And they add Jose Andres Martinez. We'll talk about all of the things that are on the list in terms of these signings, rumors, what have you, but more on VAR and laws of the game right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. VAR and IFAB and LOTG and all the acronyms you can handle when it comes to refereeing in soccer. That's where we're at right now. It's fun. It's important, though. It's an important part of the discussion because, just like we've talked about this morning with MLS growing and getting better and getting faster, the refereeing across the world maybe hasn't improved to that same pace. And I think in the United States, it definitely hasn't. And there's a huge need for U.S. soccer to put more of an emphasis on developing referees. And it hasn't exactly been the purview of Major League Soccer and USL to do that. You get certified from the federation, and the federation oversees it, but it affects the professional leagues, and it affects the quality of the matches and just the perception. It's something that is part of that great day at the stadium where you see a great match, a compelling match, an entertaining match. A good performance from the referee crew goes into that. Because if not, then what are we talking about afterwards?
Talking about the refs.
Now, here's the thing about VAR that goes back to what people expect out of it. I think one of the reasons people have a problem with it is the expectations are unrealistic. We were talking about it in the break. People come out and they judge the quality of VAR and the existence of VAR on, what was this call right? Was this call right? The calls in the Premier League this weekend. Oh, well, they got that right. They got this wrong. They got that right. This is good. Oh, they got them right this time. What I'm trying to get to today is not every individual call Because referees are going to miss calls, whether they got video to use or not. Like, they're going to get a call wrong, and they'll tell you they got a call wrong. They might not tell you they got the call wrong immediately. They'll probably wait a little while. But that's going to keep them up at night. That's going to drive them crazy. They want to get every call right. They don't want to miss anything. But you're going to. It happens. You in the heat of the moment, you miss it, or you interpret it wrong, or whatever. That's fine. VAR's not going to fix that, because VAR's not a robot. You can't have a robot call this game. There's so much that's subjective. So it's going to give you more information, but it's not going to magically fix everything. And a lot of that comes back to offside. Offside's the one that gets everybody riled up, isn't it? And you get comments. The UEFA president said recently about the VAR and offside and all that. He said, if you have a long nose, you're in an offside position these days. This is the UEFA president saying stuff like this, ridiculing the way the system is set up. So, offside, according to the laws of the game, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a subjective thing. Now, that being said, this is what Alexander Seferin, the UEFA president, this is what he said about that part of it. He said also the lines are drawn by the VARs. So it's a bit subjective drawing of objective criteria. So our proposal will be, we will discuss this with our referees division, that it is a tolerance of 10 to 20 centimeters. So now you're making a decision even more complicated, because you're going to create, so when you're drawing lines, you're going to have gray areas. All right. These are, when you get past all of it, the Soccer America article that we've been talking about, the future of VAR version 2, Ahmet Governor, who has experience with FIFA's panel of referees, with the Turkish FA, with UEFA. These are his predictions that we see over the next few years, changes that he's predicting. He says the use of third-party software for offside decisions will be foregone. If, when the ball is kicked, the decision by the crew does not look like a clear and obvious error, then the decision will stand. This is better than putting a threshold like X centimeters to the system. It will also speed up the process. If the technology cannot be consistent across the board, and that's going to be all competitions, and it's not, because you have different technologies. You have some leagues that don't use the technology, you have some that do. I think the different technologies have differing margins for error. If you can't ensure the consistency of the Hawkeye system, which is a name brand, but one of them, or the others, I'm with this. If you can't have it be consistent, then yes, it is back to the clear and obvious part of it, and that's it. And it's just clear and obvious. The VAR, when they look at it, they slow it down, and they can do all of that, and they should. If they can't tell that it's clearly and obviously wrong, then let's move on.
What do they do in the NFL?
Tell me, what do they do in the NFL?
When a play is under review, if the evidence is not clear, the evidence has to be clear enough to overturn something. If you do not have evidence that is substantial enough to overturn a call, the call stands as it was rendered on the field.
Well, no, I mean, you've had clear and obvious. That's how it is. But offside has been different, because they've been trying to get to the point of using the technology to not make it we think it's clear, we don't think it's clear, whatever. They're trying to say it is. And if they can't make it consistent across the board, then go back to clear and obvious, which is the bar anyway for VAR. I would love it, and I think that they can get to the point that it is what it is. It is the lines that you see that are there. They're not drawn by the VAR. Where they're drawn by the VAR to try to show the referee this or that, that's not a great situation. I don't like that. if you have the Hawkeye technology that even in the Premier League is not 100% clear, there is a margin for error. I think when you use it in tennis, for example, it is what it is, right? Like when you use it for tennis, you get that close up and you see immediately like it is in, it is out. Boom. Done. If you can get there, then it offside is great and we'll know. If you can't, or if you're not there yet, then it needs to just be clear and obvious, and let's not do the lines. I'm okay with that. I want it to be right, but if you can't ensure that it's right, then make it clear and obvious, and let's go.
Yep.
I think that would make it easier, and I think that would stop some of the complaining about it. Other predictions: second yellow cards will be included into the VAR protocol. I think they should. Right now, they're not. I think you can get there if you're a referee with a lot of them of, well, it looks like it could be a red, and you take a look at it because you're saying it could be a red, and you say, well, it's not a red, but they're on a yellow. We give the second yellow. Done. I think you can game the system a little bit that way, but just make it to where a second yellow leads to a red. Red cards are included in it. It is that. That's it. Other predictions. VAR will warn the referee if a misapplication of the laws of the game occurred as long as the game is not restarted. This is another one that feels like a no-brainer to me. If the video assistant referee is there, they've got the monitor, they're watching it, and the referee gets something wrong, and the play is stopped. You're not stopping play, but the play stopped. They can say, hey, you got that wrong. I'm not against that. I don't want to see added stoppages to the game, but if the referee's missed something and you can fix it, don't we want to fix that?
Yep.
I'm okay
I would hope.
Yeah. I agree with this one, too, in a big way. To speed up the process to review, the build-up period before a goal is scored will be limited, the attacking phase of play. I think at times that gets dragged out a little bit to where it feels like you're looking for something that occurred in the build-up as opposed to something obviously occurred in the build-up. That's an issue. Like, the one that I keep coming back to that occurred in the build-up, or actually it didn't occur in the build-up, sorry, this is a different situation. The San Jose Atlanta one in 18, where it was a missed call, not part of the build-up, but a missed call that then San Jose took advantage of and went down and scored. That was correct, and that has to be protected here. And I know that was one where the announcers who weren't there and didn't see the missed call on Unimas didn't understand why it took so long. But because it took long, you still need to get it right. And that should have been a penalty, and it was eventually handled correctly. But the build-up period before a goal is scored, if a foul occurs in the build-up, it does need to be a shorter window. I don't think this gets misapplied too often, but it does at times, and it feels like more so it's one that gets looked at and gets discussed and takes a lot of time and then doesn't get overturned. Because it's like, oh, well, that took place too far back. If we can figure out a way to define that and limit that, that would be a good thing. This is the one that's a no-brainer to me. With the technology in place, a timekeeper will be added to the crew in the video operation room to make the time loss standard. So the referee doesn't have to say, well, it's 5 minutes, well, it's 4 minutes, well, it's 6 minutes. The VAR crew says, you're adding 7 minutes because we've timed it. That's what happened. Done. I think you're going to get more stoppage time, generally, although there's probably some cases where the referee's given more stoppage time than they should. But in general, I think you're going to get a little more stoppage time that way. But I think it's going to feel more exact. I think what'll happen more than anything is you'll get more stoppage time in the first half. Because how many times do we have this conversation where you see a first half where you had weird stuff happen, and it's like, oh, well, it's only going to be 2 minutes because it's the first half. If it was the second half, they'd add 5 minutes, but it's the first half, so they're only going to add 2. I think if you did this, they would be more consistent with adding time for things that they should add time back for. It feels like an absolute no-brainer. If we're not gonna do what other sports do, where you stop a clock, and I don't think that's something that IFAB will ever go to, where a scoreboard clock is the decider. This feels like a no-brainer step to give more exact timing of matches.
Yeah, and that way you end up with consistency, and there's no dispute in how much time was taken to look at calls, and then that way, if the center ref sits there and only sits there, it's you get it exact, you get it locked in. There's no discussion about it, and it was a decision that was made off campus, so there shouldn't be any squawking about it whatsoever. Yeah, it does seem like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's one that I hope they get to, because it would just make everything flow a little bit better, I think. All right, what do we have on the Twitters? I know we had a couple referee laws of the game types of things. Offside is the one that's maybe the biggest black hole of the laws of the game that VAR has exposed. Because in the past, you can't see with the naked eye, like when some of these things happen, so AR is making the judgment with the flag. When we saw it first introduced in MLS, for example, you didn't have lines being drawn, you didn't have that stuff. It's still the naked eye, but with slowed down replays and such. Now when you're able to get to these points, I think people are starting to feel, well, that's not how I want offside to be called. He's a toe, or he's got a long nose, or whatever nonsense you want to say. You don't want offside to be called that way. That's a law of the game issue. Well, then how do you want it to be called? How do we want to define it? I don't know if there's an easy answer to it, to be honest. I don't think there's an easy way to do it. Now that you have slow-mo and replay and VARs and all that, it's a difficult rule, it's a difficult law to get consistently correct.
Michael Head didn't have a rules of the game question, but he did have the VAR comment. And there is some additional soccer over there updating that we can give to this particular comment. Michael says, as much as the Prem has been castigated for their rollout, I like the way the two reviews were handled in the Chelsea-Tottenham match. No need for the center ref to review. VAR got both right as quickly as possible, and Spurs have appealed the 3-game ban. And it could lead to it being doubled if the FA deem the appeal to be frivolous.
I think deeming it to be frivolous is stupid. That would be dumb. It's worthy of the appeal. I don't think they'll get it, but I get the appeal of it. I mean, 3 games for that feels stupid. That feels ridiculous. But that's the rules that they have. There's no scale. It's just automatic. Did that look like a 3-game worthy suspension situation? No. Does it look like a red? Yeah.
Yeah.
But a red and 3 games are 2 different conversations. Like, that's an idiotic law, not law to the game. That's an idiotic rule that the Premier League has. Like, you put your foot there in the way that Son did, you're going to get sent off. No problem with that. But when you start creating standards like that, is that the same as throwing an elbow on a corner where you might be able to get away with it and clear a little bit of space, throwing an elbow at somebody's head, and that's 3 games, but what Son did is 3 games? No, they're not the same thing. I don't think they should be under the same category for the suspension part of it. Now, that's separate from laws of the game. Red card, we're talking laws of the game, we're talking VAR, yeah. I mean, did Rudiger make the most of it? Yeah. Yes, he did, obviously. But is it a red? Yep. It is. 100%. Now, what was the other one that
the Gazzaniga crossbody block on Marcus Alonso.
Okay. What was your thought on that one?
That Gazzaniga should have gotten a yellow and not a red. But initially, here's where VAR came into play. Referee Anthony Taylor initially showed Marcus Alonso a yellow for the collision, but upon VAR review, it's overturned, gives Chelsea the penalty, which Willian converts to make it 2-0, and gives Gazzaniga the yellow card, which I thought was the correct call.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It's not a dog, so it's not anything that should get a red, but it's a foul committed by the goalkeeper. Just is. So, yeah, I think they got that right. How long did that one take? Do you remember roughly? I don't think it's a little more complicated. Like that gets into some serious interpretation, and that gets into, okay.
It took a little longer than the 68-second average.
Yeah.
That much I do remember.
And I'm okay with that because it's a big decision, and it's a complicated decision because normally when you see goalkeeper and striker collisions, the goalkeeper is going to get the benefit of the doubt, and they did in live action. So you've got to overturn that, and you've got to convince the referee of no, it was the other way. Now, was there an on-field review in this? I don't think there was.
I don't think there was. I don't remember one.
And that's maybe the biggest difference. The Premier League has been correctly castigated for their use of VAR this season. They've been, I think, very arrogant about not wanting to take things that have worked in other leagues. Now, they've gotten better with it, which is to be expected. They've used it more. They've got more experience with it. If this is going to be a new standard, and I'm not entirely against it, that's going to change the way, if other leagues look at this and say, all right, we don't want the on-field reviews either because it adds at least 30 seconds or however long you think it adds on a regular basis. And you just say, all right, then the VAR is the final word. Well, that changes the whole impression of VAR, doesn't it? Because the idea has never been that. I'm not against that being the case. We've talked about it from the beginning in MLS. You know, in other leagues, they went away from replay guiding the judgment of the center referee and letting the center referee making the final decision. And American football is the one that I really think of in this case. What did we see at the beginning of replay in the NFL? You'd have something get triggered, the referee goes under the hood and looks at the camera, and he's watching the whole thing, and then he comes back out and tells us what happened. Well, they've gotten away from that, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do now? Replay tells them what happened, and they tell the world. That's what this is going towards, the Premier League's way of doing it, is you're eliminating on-field review, and you're saying the VAR makes the final decision on these incidents. That's a
minute
big step.
40.
Yeah, it's a big step in the way it goes down, because that's something that they have generally fought against. They've not wanted to have somebody off the field, outside, telling the referee what happened. You've wanted the final authority to be with the man with the whistle on the field. If you get the acceptance of, we don't want on-field reviews, we want the video assistant referee to have the strength to tell the referee, no, it is X. It is a penalty. It is a red card. That's changing the idea of what VAR is. It's not an awful thing in the long, long run, but it changes the approach.
And I will take a minute 40 over a minute 8 to get it right. It's an extra 30 seconds in the grand scheme of things.
But was there an on-field review? I mean, the 30 seconds doesn't matter if there wasn't an on-field review.
No, there was no on-field review.
So I don't care 30 seconds. It took him a minute 40 more than the 30 seconds that your median check would take. It took him an extra minute 10. Okay. I don't care about the time. Honestly, I don't care about the time. Because in general, if these are what we're talking about, the medians, and it's 30 seconds, it's 60, there's an on-field review, whatever. Fine. That's fine. That's your typical situation where this occurs. Good. That's cool. That's your baseline. If you have a complicated one like this one and it takes time, and you're giving a penalty to go to 2-0, and you're giving a yellow to a goalkeeper, and you're taking a yellow away from the opposition, that's a big decision. Get it right.
Yep.
That's why I'm not really on board, the more that I think about it, with people who have said, like, there needs to be a time limit on VAR. I don't think you can do that because not every situation's the same. I don't want to see, like, this situation, for example, and the VAR is like, no, I saw that completely differently. You got it wrong. You gave the foul on the attacker. It's a foul on the goalkeeper, which means it's a penalty. Then you got to make the decision on Dogso. Is it yellow? Is it red? You got to take the yellow away from the other player. That's a lot of stuff. If you've got 60 seconds and you've got a time limit, a counter that starts, and you don't get that decision right at second 59 and it has to stand, is that what we want?
No.
Or do we want the extra 40 seconds?
I'll take the extra 40 seconds every single time.
I don't think it gets abused. I think people are always so worried about, like, oh, they're going to have all this time. Like, we get those types of situations, those really complicated ones, not that often. It's not that often. It's just like people going nuts about, bad refereeing in the 2006 World Cup because of the Portugal-Netherlands game. Well, that game wasn't typical. Like, you had two teams that wanted to kick each other all day. What else are you supposed to do? You have to keep giving cards. You have to throw cards all day. Turn into a Vegas blackjack dealer. But that's that game. That wasn't every game in the tournament. You don't get a bunch of situations like this. It happened in this one. Take the extra 40 seconds. Get it right.
And I would also like to think that over time, as both VAR and the officials are on the same page, and it goes back to our discussion about consistency with crews and who's in your ear and all that kind of stuff, that the time may get better and it won't take a minute 40 every time.
Yeah,
that's
potentially,
my gut anyway.
Potentially, but I don't think that was the issue here. I don't think it's anything about that.
No, it's not. I'm just saying that the more that it's over time, in theory, with everyone on the same page, everyone in the same ear each and every time, that you will have that familiarity in review and things will have those conversations sooner. So
but that
that's
doesn't eliminate these situations. That's what I'm not getting into that much detail of, well, it'll fix this. You're going to have complicated scenarios. You're going to have scenarios that
let them play out.
No. Listen to me. You're going to have scenarios that have 5 decisions that the VAR has to make. This one, for example, you could have had. Let's go full whammy here. You could have had the player making a run. Was he onside or was he offside? You could have had a collision right before that. Did a foul occur in the buildup? You could have had a ball deflect off of somebody's arm. Was it a handball? You could have had 5 different things that the VAR's got to decide on that could have all manifested itself in this one decision. And it's going to take a minute. That's okay. That's just going to happen. You're going to have complicated situations. Don't put a clock on it and say, well, everything has to be like this when you have some just crazy moments that happen. Going back to one that I thought was incorrect, but the Joseph Martinez goal that was pulled back against the Red Bulls for the foul in the buildup on Tim Parker. That's a tricky situation. That took a time to look at and make a decision on. I didn't like the decision, but that's one that isn't going to be take a look, take a second look, slow it down, done, got it. That's one that you got to see from a variety of angles. You got to think about it. You got to weigh a bunch of different decisions on it. So none of it's easy. And VAR is never going to make everything perfect. It can't. But can it make more decisions be correct? I think it has. And I think there's little things that can be done to make it even better. But I do think the biggest conversation that has to happen with all of this is there are things about the laws of the game that now have to be discussed in a different way because of the existence of VAR. And the number one is offside, because that feels like the situation that generates the most anger when it comes to VAR is offside. They need to get it right in the laws of the game first. And they need to write the new law or update the new law based off what you have at a baseline level with VAR's involvement now. And if you can't write it to where technology will fix it and give you the exactness of the way the law is written now, then you need to write the law knowing that. And you need to go to something involving the naked eye, or if you even want to get to not slowing things down to a certain point for the VAR part of the law, I don't know. I don't know where you want to go with it, but you've got to do something about it, because that's the one that everybody gets the most upset about week in, week out. The other
would handball be number 2?
That's a different. That's not as much of a VAR issue. It's a law of the game issue, and it's one that I know what they tried to do. They just made a change. I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it more black and white, and I think they made it worse by doing that. I think it needs to have a little more interpretation to it. It's one that can be tweaked too, but the offside one by far is the bigger issue. When it comes to like the new world with VAR involved, offside is by far the bigger issue here.
And that was why I was asking about handball, because if you get into handball, I think it's more of a laws of the game issue when you're talking about heading in a direction and natural movements and things like that. And I know that people get frustrated on that one as well.
Well, the thing is, they're two different scenarios, because offside, according to the laws of the game, is black and white. It's objective. You are past the defenders. You're in a situation. You are offside. There's not a judgment to it. It is. Handball is always going to have a judgment because of the nature of the infraction. So it's two different conversations with the two. I don't think you can lump them together in the same conversation exactly. So the handball thing, again, I know what they were trying to do with this. I just think they made it worse with some of the description and some of the verbiage in here. I think they made it worse with some of this. I think they got the idea of the arm or hand being above the shoulders as this is typically a handball. Okay. I like that guideline. I'm good with that. I like the arm on the ground when you're sliding. Definition and clarity. Cool with that. They tried to address some of the distance from, if it deflects off of a guy's kneecap and it comes up into their arm, that's not a handball. Tried to get some of that. That one's a little harder. I don't like the part about any handling in an attacking sense that leads to a goal is a handball, but it's not the same to be a handball against a defender in that situation. I don't know if you need to separate the two. I think it is or it isn't, either way. Some of it's going to be consistency in the way it's called, because this is one that, look, how different is it than, trying to think of one, shoulder, for example, shoulder to shoulder. When you're going into a player with your shoulder and it's a judgment. Some referees allow more contact, others don't want any. Then you get into, well, they dropped his shoulder a little bit. Well, he pulled his arm out a little bit. He chicken winged it. It's judgment. I think handling needs that ability for the referee to make the judgment. Offside needs to be defined to where it is yes or no. They're so different that it's hard to even lump them into the same conversation, if that makes sense. Yeah. One's always going to be a judgment. One should be always a black or white scenario, but it's becoming a judgment, or I think people want it to be a judgment, and I don't think it can be. I think it just needs to be defined. Offside shouldn't be a judgment, but how you decide on it is what they need to get to, and that's going to be the hardest part because of consistency.
And that was why I asked. So what else is going
on? Some rumors around the league before we go. Looks like the Galaxy are going to be adding a left back, Emiliano Insua. 1-year deal, option for a second season. He has been at Stuttgart. He has bounced around a little bit. Boca Juniors, Liverpool, Galatasaray, Sporting Lisbon, Atletico Madrid, Rayo Vallecano. He's been all over the place. 30 years old, experienced. You look at the Galaxy's depth chart. Defensively, it's an area they've got to get better. If you're going to play Jorgen Skjelvik in the middle, you need somebody at left back, unless you're going to hand it over completely to Didi Traore, which maybe would be a little bit big of an ask. You bring in a veteran, you get him for a year. It seems to make sense. Feels like the right kind of move for an LA Galaxy team that is always trying to win MLS Cup. We mentioned Yemi Chara, Diego Chara's brother, 28 years old, winger/forward, Atletico Mineiro in Brazil. He's been linked to the Timbers before. Caracol Radio in Colombia is reporting that it's pretty much done. That's a big get. That's your Brian Fernandez replacement. The forward Minnesota's been linked to Luis Amarilla. He is in Ecuador most recently with Universidad Católica. 19 goals and 24 appearances, led the league in their Serie A season. 24 years old, and Pulso Sports in Seattle is saying that he is linked to Minnesota. He was linked to Portland at one point, but it's looking like Minnesota is where he will end up. That's big. That's a big get, because Minnesota's got to have a consistent goal scorer. That's been the big lacking element since they got rid of Christian Ramirez. Didn't work out with Angelo Rodriguez. They need somebody. Amarilla, young, should be a good fit. He's got the track record. Now you get into that whole, all right, is a player from Ecuador going to be hitting the ground running faster than a player from Poland? I think so. I think the style of play is a little close. I mean, you said it like it's an absolute. I don't know if it's an absolute. The Ecuadorian league is not nearly the Argentine league. It's not the Colombian league. It's not Liga MX. It's a good league.
Yeah.
But it's not at that level. So
True.
You're talking about a guy who scored about the same number of goals, fewer games in Ecuador for Amarilla versus Buxa. But how are they going to translate to MLS? And that's going to be a question, I think, for both of them. And we'll have to wait and see. All right. You're on this day today. A couple soccer ones. The first ever soccer club in Spain was formed on this day in 1889. Recreativo de Huelva. That's how they're known today. They were founded by British workers at the Rio Tinto Mining Company. They won a whole bunch of regional titles before 1920, but now they're currently in the regional third division of the Spanish pyramid. Recreativo de Huelva, the first ever soccer club in Spain. They're known as, translated, either the dean or the grandpa of Spanish soccer. 1997. What? Why'd you go okay about that?
No, I'm agreeing with you. Okay. First club.
You said it like you were skeptical.
No,
El
not
Abuelo.
a skeptical.
El Abuelo. There's the granddad. 1997, Ronaldo from Brazil won the first of his 2 Ballon d'Or awards. This was before his 1998 World Cup coming out party, except for the final where he had the crazy seizure or panic attack, or I don't think they ever truly figured out what it was. But like the eve of the final, I mean, to the point that there were reports coming out he wasn't going to be in the squad, and then he was in the squad, and then there was the discussion of should he be in the squad. That was 6-7 months after this. He won the Ballon d'Or for just an unbelievable year. It was the first of his 2, and if you have not seen this era, I think a lot of people who think of Ronaldo think of the later Ronaldo, where he's a little bit bigger. He'd had some injuries. Yes. When he was playing, he was still scoring goals even when he was bigger. But he was a completely different player in 1997. You're talking about maybe one of the most impressive players to ever play the game, because he had the size, he had the strength, he had the speed, he had the moves, he had the goal-scoring ability, he had everything. He had everything you could ask for. Wasn't able to keep that physically at the highest level for as long of a time as anybody would have liked, but he still found a way to be a goal scorer. I mean, even his time towards the end at Real Madrid, when he wasn't as mobile, he was still scoring goals. He was still putting the ball in the back of the net. Your musical birthday as we wrap up on the 23rd, Eddie Vedder or Pearl Jam? What's your favorite Pearl Jam song, John?
I had a list of 6.
Oh, jeez. Never a clear answer. What are your list of 6, John?
Well, I was going to give you the one that first popped into my head from that list of 6.
Okay. Well, I need the whole list of 6 now.
All right. Indifference.
Okay.
WMA.
Oh, I never liked that song.
What?
One of my least favorite.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
Amongst the Waves.
I didn't like either one.
No, it's not a glorified G guy. Amongst the Waves.
Okay.
Just Breathe.
Yep, that's a good one from the later output, yes.
Immortality.
Okay.
And Rearview Mirror.
Okay. You missed
That's
Corduroy. Corduroy is their best, I think. What else would be on my list? Black, obviously, and I think a lot of people would try to leave it off because it was so big. No, it was big because it was good. Incredibly well written.
Yeah, their first 2 albums were just absolutely insane. Ridiculous.
First 3, Vitology, too. It was a little more up and down, but you had some brilliant stuff there. They've had brilliant stuff all the way through. What I've liked about them, and I mean, I was really into them. I saw them at the Fox in '94 when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah? How long did it take that show to sell out?
No, it's a whole different conversation, because they didn't say, yeah, tickets are going on sale on Friday. And it was before social media.
Didn't they give like 30 minutes notice or something?
Something like that. They'd announce it on the radio station. So we were in school, and they announced it. And we had narrowed it down from following message boards on Prodigy and CompuServe as to when they might announce it, because we knew when the show was. And they announced it like while we're in school. And by the time we got to Blockbuster Music, they'd already sold out. I think it sold out in like 15 minutes or something, because it's at the Fox. It's like 4,000 seats when they're on the biggest band in the world at this time. Mm-hmm. So we ended up getting tickets through a scalper, decent price. So we go, and incredible show. They played some stuff from Vitology, but it was on the Versus tour. It was the night before the famous one that was on the radio, that 99X broadcast that is pretty easy to find. We saw it the night before. And the two cool things that were about that one. They did the trilogy of songs that was. Oh, I'm trying to remember the right order of it. I think it was Alive, Once, and Footsteps, which was a B-side. I think that was the story order. They did that, those three songs in a row, which was really cool because they didn't play Footsteps a ton. And they came out for the encore, and Eddie came out by himself and did The Kids Are All Right by The Who solo, which was really cool. Because that was really different. Let's see. Corduroy's my favorite. Black is high on the list. Rearview Mirror is definitely high on the list. Dissident is high on the list. I love the two songs from the Singles soundtrack, State of Love and Trust and Breathe. Or Breath, sorry. Those two are going to be on my list for sure. Breath probably would be. It's on my EP of Pearl Jam songs. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
What I will tell our listeners to go do if you want to celebrate Eddie Vedder's birthday today is to go watch their Unplugged from 92 because it is mind-blowing. And it wasn't one that got a ton of play. They didn't do a very long set. And I think when they aired it, they only did 30 minutes. And there are a couple songs that they didn't air. I think the unaired performance is out there on YouTube. To hear those songs from 10, and I think it's all from 10. I don't think they had anything that ended up on Versus on the Unplugged. But to hear those songs that as hard and heavy and fast, to hear them in an acoustic format that are still fast and still super intense, it's really cool. So. You want to listen? You want to celebrate Eddie Vedder's birthday? That's how you do it. Go listen to the Unplugged performance from 92.
Sounds like a plan.
That's what I'll be doing right about now as we're done. Soccer over there tonight, sometime after 6 o'clock, live from the Brewhouse Cafe. You can listen to it on the app. You can listen to it on soccerdownhere.net on Spreaker. You can still get your Soccer Down Here scarves, $20 a piece, $5 for shipping. You can still get your stuff on teespring.com/soccer-down-here. You've got different city series stuff there. We've got people buying sweatshirts and wearing them outside of Minnesota United. That's pretty cool. Thanks, Marshall.
Yep.
We've got people drinking out of Soccer Down Here mugs. All that stuff is very cool. There's also the Patreon, and we've got new stuff coming in 2020 for you. And you guys can help us make it even bigger and better. We've got some shows coming up starting in February live. That'll be very cool. We've got some regular content previewing Atlanta United matches coming up. That'll be very cool with some different voices in the mix. It's going to be a lot of fun in 2020. Stuff like the scarves, stuff like the Teespring, stuff like the Patreon. All that just helps us grow and helps us provide as high quality of content as we possibly can when John's Google documents work.
Hey, I'm waiting for my CompuServe to get fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe you can help John's CompuServe subscription or his AOL. Maybe you can get him some more of those AOL minutes discs and he can get more minutes. There we go. That's what we'll do.
That would be pretty sweet.
Those are big on the black market. So until soccer over there later today, mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho plata, y'all.